Hello everyone, my name is Misael, or as most of you may know me, MOC Photos. Welcome to my first tutorial video where I'll be showing you how I edit pictures to look the way they do. For example, how I took this ordinary picture and turned it into something like this, using both Lightroom 5 and Photoshop CS6. In this video, I'm only going to show you the steps I took using Lightroom, and soon I'll be doing a part 2 to cover what exactly I did in Photoshop, which as you can see was quite a bit. So let's get started here. First thing off, I like to straighten out my pictures using the straighten tool here, and as you can tell I don't have a horizon to actually click and drag across it. So what I'll do is I will click and drag from the front wheel to the back wheel here. There we go. Next, I like to come down and enable the profile corrections, where if you have a wide angle lens especially, you get a lot of vignetting or a lot of warping from it. So I like to click that. As you could tell, it fixed up the image. And I like to click also remove chromatic aberration or purple fringing. And I went ahead and looked at the picture and noticed it didn't completely get rid of the fringing. So I came over to color and moved the slider up to where just about it moves the chromatic aberration, as you could tell it did there. Okay, so after that, I really like to make the car pop, and as you could tell, it doesn't really pop from there. So I'm going to use my adjustment brush, go ahead and color in the ground here. And if you press O, you can see where exactly you're painting. It'll show the overlay. So I'll paint that in quickly. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, if you hit O again to remove the overlay. And I'm going to go ahead and reduce the exposure, or go ahead and do it all the way, that way you could see what exactly you missed. And you could come back in and repaint whatever you didn't get. Alright, so go ahead and reduce the exposure. And I also noticed there's a bit of an orange tint to it, or a warm tint to it. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the saturation. So if you do a composite, you could always come in and add the color of which you are doing your composite on. For example, the purple, I'll be adding that in Photoshop later. Then I like to bump up the clarity to add a bit of texture to the ground. Something around there, not too crazy. As you could tell, it doesn't look as good, of course. Somewhere along there. Maybe a little contrast. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the gradient tool here, and once again darken up the ground a little more, just so it brings the attention more towards the car. See if it shows up here. There we go. Something like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the adjustment brush tool again to paint in the car this time. Once again doing something quick here. And to reduce the tint it has, once again it has a warm tint to it, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the saturation. And this mostly only works on white cars. If you have a blue car, red car, the saturation is not going to work for you. So I'm going to remove a little bit of that brush there on the light, just so you don't lose the color there. On this sticker, which was a gold sticker, and maybe on the rims as well here. There we go. So this is what it's looking like so far from the before and the after. Alright, next I'm going to work on the image as a whole, working with the shadows, contrast, exposure, whatever it is. So since the car is mainly made up of highlights, I'm going to go ahead and bump those up to make the car stand out a little more. The shadows as well, just because I like to keep detail in my dark areas. Just a little bit of clarity. Some people like to bump it up all the way, and personally I do not like how that looks, so I'm going to keep it low. Okay, if you have a blue sky, that's going to really reflect down on your car, so what I do with the color here is reduce the blue. I don't think I have too many in this picture, and it's going to reduce any blue color you have around your car or on the ground or anywhere else. You can do that as well with the greens or any other color that might be protruding, or I guess kind of not protruding, but messing up your picture here. Okay, so sharpening. I like to come up to somewhere around anywhere between 50 and 60, just because too much sharpening, of course, also brings out too much noise, so make sure you don't go too high on that. And if I go ahead and hold Alt and drag across the masking, you can see what exactly is being sharpened. So once again, I'm going to go up to around 46. You can see what exactly is sharpened there. Luminance, I'm going to go up, keep that low as well, just so your image doesn't look too soft, but also reduces your noise reduction, of course, is what it is there. And to make the car stand out just a little more, I'm going to use one more brush tool here and paint around the car just a little below it, just to give it a bit of a spotlight effect. So just mess around with the exposure here. If it's too harsh, you could also come back in, hold Alt, and soften out the edges so the edges don't look so harsh. Somewhere along those lines. Alright, so exposure, the image does look a little dark, so I'm going to go ahead and just bump that up a little bit. Contrast also just a little. Don't want your image too dark. So there we have it. As you could tell, here's the before and the after, or side by side. You could tell there's already a bit of a difference. The rest I do in Photoshop. You could do a little more sharpening, you could add a different tint to it, but this is mainly what I do in Lightroom. And if you ever wanted to add some more color to it, of course, you could always go back to your levels here and mess around with your RGB. If you want a little blues in your shadows, you could do that as well. But as you can tell, I don't do much in Lightroom. I just export it, import it to Lightroom, and from there I export it over to Photoshop. because personally I like how Lightroom deals with the temperature, the tint, the sharpening, and a few other things that in Photoshop you can't do as well. So I hope you like this video. If you do, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be coming out with the part 2 soon enough.